In the era of ChatGPT, I think applications of AI go far beyond complex conversational bots. I would be curious, if you are curious actually, of the applications that you could apply in your enterprise, and more importantly maybe, how you could leverage open source tools as well as the public cloud, or maybe open source tools on the public cloud. I'm Andrea Montano. I'm a MLOps product manager at Canonical, the publisher of Ubuntu. And today I'll talk about, as you might guess, open source MLOps platforms on AWS or on the public cloud. Of course, applications of AI are available in all industries, from card fraud detection in financial services to churn prevention in retail or drill summarization in oil and gas. And that's exciting. But the main question is, how do we scale it up? How do we actually help organizations, depending on their journey and where they are, how ready they are to implement AI, to actually make it happen? But I'll start with my own journey here, and actually how I got introduced to the public cloud for AI projects. A couple of years ago, I was interviewing someone to join our company, and they told me about a project that they had. They used crayfish, or his parents, had a crayfish farm. And I'm not sure how much you know about it. I didn't know much. But the truth is that when they lose their shell, crayfishes, they can die if the shell is not removed right away. It translated into the family spending a lot of time just monitoring all these buckets where crayfish grow. So the student back then, he was a graduate actually, built a model that would run on surveillance cameras that would alert automatically the family when the shell of the crayfish is lost so they can go and remove it. It optimized their operations. However, he wanted to scale his project and help other companies. And that's where he needed more compute power. That's when he moved his open source tools and his project on AWS. Well, that sounds easy, but the truth is that when it comes to AI, not everything is so easy. I like to classify the challenges in 4 big buckets. And about the skill gap on the market, I think everyone here knows about it. We don't have enough data scientists. We don't know how to maintain an MLOps platform. And we struggle actually hiring. But then we look at the operations, and maintenance and scalability are the questions or the issues that we hear the most about. And when it comes to technology, I think you can read in the news every other day about a new tool, a new platform, a new framework that's popping up. How do you choose the right one? How do you choose the one that's the most suitable for your organization? That's where we come in and help. But then also data is the heart of any AI project. If we think of a bank or the healthcare industry, or a healthcare organization, they often work with highly sensitive data. But more importantly, the stats are saying how the volume of data is exponentially growing year on year. All these to put together require more compute power to address as well. Now, I like to say that everyone uses AI nowadays. You have it in all industries. But then the truth is that also companies are in different stages in their AI journey. Some of them are just getting started because ChatGPT challenged them to rethink their AI strategy, whereas some others are moving away from legacy tools, and that's fine. But let's not make it any longer. Let's look at some use cases. Smart cities. Well, I live in Dubai, and they're building a smart city there. I know some others here in the US as well. And the truth is that AI is the heart or the core of all the smart cities projects, from traffic optimization to solar panel optimization. There are tons of applications. And about Gen AI and how it helps everyone, well, we all know it. If I think of chatbots or image generation, there are plenty of applications already, open source or not. And the media and entertainment industry, or the gaming industry here, also benefits from AI, but they all seem as being applications for large enterprises. But let's make it simple. Actually, artificial intelligence helps all of us. It makes our lives easier because it leads to less pollution. If we think of the street light uh, uh, sensors, it helps us have predictable costs, and it offers us better experiences. Just things of all the system recommenders that help you out when you buy things. But what's the open source role, you might wonder? Well, in Canonical, we have the open source in our DNA. So of course I'm biased, but at the same time, I've seen an entire movement and shift in the AI industry where everything is open source, so most of it's open source. And the truth is that it's available to everyone. It's easy to get started, and also it's easy to contribute to add new features. Do you want something that is not available in a tool? There's nothing to stop you to write some code. And more importantly, someone else might need it as well. And maybe it's not that important initially, but having something that's free to use, especially for early adopters, for students, it's incredible. Now, when it comes to Canonical and our MLOps solution, maybe it's important to think of how you can plug it in and plug it out, depending on different tools, because AI projects, unlike innovation from the past, they don't benefit from an out-of-the-box solution. Each industry, each company, and more importantly, each use case is different. So having the freedom of choice, as well as being able to optimize your costs, is crucial. But since we also mentioned about the journey that you take on AI, it's worth mentioning that it starts with the enterprise readiness. Most of the times, you start on a laptop. If it runs Ubuntu, it's amazing. If it doesn't, maybe you should think of it. But then as the project grows and matures, new tools come in place. And that's when it can get complicated. But how do you get started? An Ubuntu machine, that's what we like. But then usually you get started with simple tools. Jupyter notebooks are the favorites of all data scientists. And probably MLflow for experiment tracking. I guess that's the usual setup that I've seen. How do you scale, however, is the main question. And when companies start scaling their projects, most of the times, they want faster time to market. It often translates, actually, in faster training of the models, bigger teams to run their AI projects. So user management is needed as well, but also more compute power. That's when we advise customers to leverage what they have already, if it's on-prem or public cloud, but also think beyond it. Use hybrid or multi-cloud scenarios, depending on how it's suitable, and train and use your data based on it. Optimize the usage of GPUs, optimize your networks as well. Freedom of choice, it's another question that we often get, and it's not just about the tools, but also about the projects, and the ability to migrate from one environment to another. You might guess. Now, of course, we advise people to use open source tools. The skill gap, I already mentioned about it, and it's really important because as long as you don't have enough people to run your projects, you might feel overwhelmed as a company. However, you can help the team that you already have. A lot of the work in the data science world is done manually. What if you would automate all that work such that they could spend time on meaningful activities? What if you would use MLOps platforms that actually enable them to focus on building models rather than integrating tools and dealing with tools compatibility? Because that's frustrating, I have to say. And security and compliance. I already mentioned the fact that many AI projects run on highly sensitive data, and that's where questions come in place. How do you ensure that your data will not be stolen? How do you ensure that your project will not be maliciously used or taken in any way? Security patching, it's one of the things, and if you've heard about PyShell from a couple of weeks or months ago, that's when you start looking at tools that are distributed by a trusted vendor. And the truth is that you can run AI on any cloud. I've heard companies being able to run on public clouds and focusing on that. I've heard companies running on-prem. Which choice to have, or which option is better for you? I always say it depends. But more importantly, don't think of the cloud when you start your AI project. Think of the problem that you have. Don't do AI because your company or your manager told you about that, because your competitor does that, because you've seen in the news about ChatGPT. It's all nice, but does it really solve a problem for you? Do you really need Gen AI in your company, or maybe you just need some predictive analytics, which they have been there already, and there is nothing to stop you benefiting from them? And that's the first thing that you should bear in mind. Run AI only if you have a problem to solve. And after that, look at the data. What data do you have? And actually, do you have enough data? Where does it live? Only after that, we go to the cloud part and how to leverage it. Optimize based on the infrastructure that you have in place. If you mostly use AWS, perfect. Get started there, and after that, build a long-term strategy. But if you have GPUs on-prem, you should leverage them. And you should ensure that you optimize the usage of them, because nowadays, many companies have GPUs, and they utilize them around 20 to 30%. After that, build a long-term strategy, and ensure you have a platform that enables teams to collaborate. They can reproduce their work, and they don't duplicate a lot of the things that they do. And that's probably one of the most important lessons that I would like us to leave this room with. And before we finalize, I'll go back to the crayfish story. I love hearing from our community and from people in general, what projects do they work on, how do they benefit, and how do they leverage AI. That's what we love the most. However, I would like to ask you, what's your AI project or your crayfish project that you could get started on your own laptop and then scale on the public cloud, if that's what you want? Because if you identify that, then probably you could help your team, your colleagues, maybe your home. I don't know, maybe you have some fun projects that you can work on in your own home. And that's probably where I'll soon wrap it up. Use open source tools because they are free to use and easy to use, of course. And don't shy away from contributing to them. Platforms such as Kubeflow, MLflow, Jupyter Notebooks, Spark are a couple of the famous ones. And they've been growing just because people try them out and try to improve them based on their needs. Bear in mind that if you bump into a problem, it's very likely that you're not the first one. Just Google it, go to the Slack channels, and you'll find the solution. And don't forget, you can always innovate at speed with open source AI. And if you'd like to learn more, we do have a podcast. It's called Ubuntu AI, as well as a publication. We mainly talk about, as you might guess, open source MLOps and open source AI. We have different guests. And also, if you'd like to talk more to us, we are at booth 301 on the diagonal of this place to hear more about. And I think we also have time for some questions. I'm not sure if you have a mic, but if you do have questions,